Okay, Ella Omar Abaye. So we're on Lamed Aleph Amud Beis, and we're on the top of the Amud. And let's just reiterate what we ended up with yesterday. We had a question and an answer and a slug up of the answer. The question was why the Mishnah, when it gets to Gerushin, and it creates a situation where you have a Safek Tzoras Erva and she's Choletzes Velomis Yabemes, the Mishnah gives a couple of complex gittin kind of situations. Like where he wrote a get without the date on it, he wrote the get with only 1/8 signed on it. Why didn't the Mishnah go straight and be symmetrical with what it already established and formulated in the Reisha, namely in the case of Kedushin, where he threw Kedushin that was Safek Law. So Rabbah offered an answer. And if you recall, Abaye smashed that answer. So what we're left with now is back to square one, and we have to go back to this drawing board and come up with another alternative answer as to why the Mishnah in the case of Gerushin, the Sefer avoided the case of Safek Harav Lo, Safek Harav Lo. Ella Omer Abaye. Yagid Olav Reo. Yagid Olav Reo is a pasuk. He doesn't tell you exactly where the pasuk. I guess maybe it's like a.
No.
Oh, he tells you where it is.
Yeah.
So it's the 36th chapter of Iyov. Okay. Yagid Olav Reo. In other words, sometimes what you have is Reo are two friends or neighbors that are contiguous, and there's no need to reiterate in the second case what you've already spelled out in the first case. Because Magid Olav Reo, his friend, so to speak, tells you or sheds a light on you. So you have Kedushin in the Reisha and Gerushin in the Sefer. So the Mishnah doesn't even bother telling you in the Gerushin that the same law applies in Safek Harav Lo, Safek Law. We understand that by process of osmosis, by process of comparing, of analogy of the two. That's called Magid Olav Reo. And then the Mishnah is free to tell me another Chiddush beyond that. So, Tana Kedushin, V'hu did L'Gerushin. So again, if a person throws a get to a woman that would be his ex-wife, if the Gerushin is Chal, but she is an erva to his brother Reuven, let's say he was married to Reuven's daughter. So in that case, the first wife, which is the tzara of the erva, would now fall for Yevamot. And why would she fall for Yevamot? Because if the get is valid, then she's no longer tzara's erva, and therefore she falls for Yevamot. So that's what he writes here. Tonik b'kedushin, v'hu adin b'gerushin. Okay. Now keep in mind, we're not sure that the get is valid, and if the get is valid, she needs chalitza yibum. On the other hand, if the get is not valid, then she's a tzaras erva. She doesn't need neither this nor that. So the pshara, the compromise, would be choletzes velomis yabemes. In other words, we're going to require chalitza. We have to require chalitza because if the get is a valid get, then she falls for yibum. On the other hand, we can't let her go away scot-free without chalitza, because if the get is not valid, then if the get is valid, then she needs chalitza or yibum. Right. Now keep in mind that yibum is an impossibility because if the get is valid, she's a tzaras erva, which makes her into a eishes achud. Oh, now Abai goes a step further because Magid Olav Reo is a two-directional, road. It goes in both. It's du sitri, as we say. So that now Gerushin has to somehow shed a light on Kedushin. In Tana b'Gerushin, v'hu adin l'Kedushin. So what happens if a man is makadosh an isha with a shtar? So just like he could be Megarish his wife with the shtar, he could be Makadish his wife with the shtar. And now Gerushin and our Mishnah is going to shed a light on Kedushin, because just like in the case of Gerushin, the halacha of a man who gives a get to his wife who's a tzara, his wife who's an erva to his brother, and that get has no zman on it, or alternatively, it only has one witness signed on it, the same thing will apply in Kedushin, and that's what Gittin, the Sefer of Get is going to shed a light on the ratio of Kedushin to teach me that if the Shtar Kedushin is missing a Zman, or it has the signature of only one witness, then in such a case, the Rabbanan passel the Shtar, and therefore, if they passel the Shtar, she cannot fall for Yibum, because by passing the Shtar, she remains as in her original status as Tzaras Erev. On the other hand, Midoraisa, the Shtar is perfectly valid, which makes her into a Tzaras Erev, and therefore she doesn't need Chalitza, and Yibum is an impossibility because of Eishazah. So the Pshara, to work it all out, is going to be Choletzes Palomas Yavenis. Now let's just think about this for a moment. You see, in the case of get, Zman is rabbinically at least critical. Why? Because Shemi Yechapel Basachoso. You remember that? Let's go over that again, if you don't mind. So we're afraid that she's his niece, he married his niece, and she, had some hanky-panky. So what is he going to do? He's going to write a get, give her the get, and there's no Zman on the get. So that when the case comes up in court, we cannot condemn her for having this relationship because maybe the get was already chal. We don't know when the get was delivered. Now, if we mirror image or clone it onto Kedushin, it's a little bit difficult, because what are we going to say in Kedushin? The man gave a woman Kedushin without his man. Where's the Shemi Yechapel Basal Chosim?
A relationship before.
What, before he gave her the Kedushin, the Shtar?
Yeah. Okay, no.
Just 1 second. I think it's just, I'm not trying to disagree with you, but I think it's just the opposite. Let's say she had a relationship after he gave her the Kedushin.
No.
And then he's going to say that the Kedushin came after the relationship. If she had a relationship before the Kedushin, then, again, I'm not going to give her a prize for that, but that's not a violation of HZ. But here, the fear is that he gave her the Kedushin, but how would he know? Still not smooth. How would he anticipate? You understand what I'm asking?
Well, he didn't necessarily anticipate.
In the case of a get, the facts on the ground is that she did have this adultery relationship. So now he gives her a get in order to save her skin, because she's his niece. But in the case of Kedushin, what happens? After the Kedushin, she had this relationship, and what? What's he going to do now? Unless he's a genius, and he gave her the Kedushin, left out this Zman, just in case she would have this relationship. I don't know. It's that's very far-fetched, no? And I'm tempted to think, again, I'm not saying this is so smooth, but I'm tempted to think that we have a hekesh between shtar and shtar. There's a shtar gerushin, there's a shtar kedushin. The Rabbanan, by instituting a requirement of Zman in the get, they're making a general rule for all shtaros. And we're not going to go into every single shtar as a separate category and decide whether or not we're going to require Zman. I don't know. Now let's go back for a moment to talk about Eid Echad. What was the issue with Eid Echad? You remember there was something about Lishma. Does that ring a bell? Yes, no,
Yeah,
maybe?
Right. Whether the sofer.
Right.
Second.
Right. So let's go back to that. Eid Echad. So he says, I'm just reading the Masechet back on Daf Lamed Amid Beis, but let's not lose that place here. But he says, Nechleku Rav Ushmuel begitten Teva. L'das Rav Medubar Shamuvad Chasimas Eid Echad Haget Nichtav B'Ksav Yodo. So it's written by the Baal himself. I get possible. Posif atana shafilu im yesh eid echad milvad ksav yod mikol makom get possible b'rabban. Okay, so that's Rav. So Rav has a problem of ksav yod. We really don't know why ksav yodo is possible in get. Why is ksav yodo possible in get? Yodo possible in get. If you hold 80 chasima cars, yeah, but he's not holding 80 chasima cars because he's saying that it's possible to get even if there was one aid. I mean, that's Sudorais if you hold 80 chasima cars. So he's definitely holding 80 Masira cars. So if there are 80 Masira, the man writes a get and he gives it to his wife in front of 2 then what should be the problem? And that's almost a simple shot in the Bible because Allah said increases, man, also beyond. It's like this is the original, She can really one day sell it on the market, if he becomes famous. I'm just kidding. What's the problem of Yodo? Let's say we're afraid he doesn't know anything about Lishma. Maybe even though Minat Torah, 80 Masira Kars, but the Rabbanan want her to have a way in which she can prove that she received the get. Yeah, but no, he gave the Ksav Yodo in front of 2 witnesses. So what's the problem? All right, let's try Shmuel. Maybe we'll have better luck with Shmuel. L'da Shmuel, Meduver Ksav HaSofer, V'yed Echad. Minat Torah get kosher. And I think, again, even if you hold 80 chasima kars, L'fisha HaSofer, Mitztaref, Im Ha'ed HaChosav B'get. Chacham Apostle gets there. L'fisha Yesh L'achshel Shema HaSofer Kosav. This is what, Steve, you were referring to before. Right? Shema HaSofer Kosav is a get Lihislamet. Right? Shalom L'shma. So I'm thinking out loud, if that be the case, it should apply to a Shtar Kiddushin as well. Once again, L'Islamed could apply to a Shtar Kiddushin as well. So it's not limited to a Shtar Kiddushin. And, but here's the punchline. I have to add this. That just like in get, there's halach of L'shma. You can't just pick up a get from the street that happens to have the right names on it and use it. So too, Shtar Kiddushin has to be written L'shma. That's another example of the analogy between Gittin and Kiddushin. So if we go with Shmuel, I have no problem understanding our sugya in a case of a get sheyesh bo eid echad. But if I go with Rav, that the problem is that Ksav Yodo is a psul, so I don't know why it's possible in get, so I certainly can't figure out why it's possible in Shtar Kiddushin. So that's just an unknown. Omalei Rava, I Yagid Olav Reo. If you're learning the Mishnah with the principle of Yagid Olav Reo, is my Zeu Dikton. Right? The Mishnah says Zeu Safek Kiddushin. And the word Zeu is always a mute. Right? There are 2 languages in the Mishnah to be compared and contrasted. One is Zaklal, and the other is Zeu. Whenever it says in the Mishnah Zaklal, it's coming as a reboot to include and expand the category. And when it says Zeu, it means this and only this. And the Safek Kiddushin here is Karav Lo. I'd love to know the lumdus here. In other words, I understand that Rava has a diuk from the choice of the word Zeu, But what's the wonders now? So why should the Mishnah write Zehu? Why shouldn't the same thing apply? Right, the cases that we gave and the Psul D'Rabbanan and Get should apply to Kiddushin as well. Do you have any note on this by any chance? I don't see a note here. Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah.
What? I can't hear you, Steve. A little loud. And Mamish don't hear a word.
Yeah, I mean,
are you whispering?
Says, I just want to read it first to see if it's
okay.
like it hit in the application.
All right, I'm joshing you.
So he says twice the Mishnah sums up with the expressions who. This is once after stating the case of the question, and then after listing the three cases.
All that we have, I'm just.
Right.
Does he tell you why a questionable kedushin could not be the identical case of a questionable gerushin, meaning the case where he left out the second witness, or what was the other possibility, or he left out the zman, right?
Right.
Does he tell you why in kedushin that would not qualify that would not constitute a psul? That's the only question I want to get an answer to.
Co-wife of an Erba betrothed with an undated kedushin document, full-fledged co-wife of an Erba Shania before marrying. Implied by this answer is if the Erba betrothed with one of the other types of documents written in his own hand, with no witness assigned on it, or one of the scribe, the co-wife would require.
You're talking about a star kedushin, undated star kedushin.
Yeah.
Oh, so he's saying that in an undated star kedushin, right? So now that's the erva, right? That's Rivka.
Right.
Rivka gets from Shimon an undated star kedushin. Does that make Sarah into a tsaras erva? And he's saying it would be possible. Is that what he's saying? But that's not Rava. That may be Abaye. Maybe you're reading Abaye. You have to see where the note goes on. The number. You have to check the numbers out.
With Zeu Kadush, they say, which is precise, since the example of a document without a date in regards to a divorce does not apply to trouble.
Oh, why? Does he explain? That's the point I'd love to know.
Yeah.
If he could only clarify that for me, then I would tip my hat. Follow what I mean? There's some didn't get that's very specific, and it doesn't apply. You can't extend it to Kiddush. So I'm just wondering why. Maybe it's going to come up a little later. Let's see. Elam a Rava kol sheyesh bekiddushin, yesh begerushin, yesh begerushin aim bekiddushin. So it's not a two-way street. So Rava, if I understand correctly, is willing to accept the principle and apply Yagid Olav Reo, but only in one direction. That A sheds a light on B, but doesn't go the other direction. He says here, Hainu im yitain le'erva shtar kiddushin. Sheyesh bo chashash shebeget haya hadin choletzes v'lo yisberes. B'kiddushin hadin. I'm covering the next few words to see if I can figure that out on my own. In kiddushin, it's going to be valid kiddushin, and therefore she doesn't even need chalitz. Let's see if this is right. B'kiddushin hadin shemuteres l'shuk below chalitz. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Now we have to know why. Okay, let's see if he explains. It says kevon chashtar kiddushin kosher af midrabanan. Oh, ulahalon. He's telling you, Berzon, be patient. Ulahalon tivayir hagemara. Eza ofen Nishnu b'mishnah gabi get shepasul rabbanan eno noeg b'shtar kiddush. And wait a second, he says there are three cases. What was the third case? I don't remember. Second. Yeshel of Eden v'Einbo Zman. Yeshbo Zman v'Einbo Ela Eirech. I only see. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Kosa v'Ksav Yodo v'Einol of Eden. That's the third case that I missed. So you have a Ksav Yod. So the Baal wrote to get himself, but what? He didn't sign to Eden. On a Doraisa level, that's kosher, right? We're holding Eden Masira Karsi. Somebody should point that out here, but I don't know. I don't need any, for that, I don't need anyone to point that out. I know that on my own. Okay? But Paslu Chachamim, Sheish Lachush, Shemashina, I don't know. I don't even want to read this because I don't understand what he's talking about. I'm just not up to it yet. All right? So again, he's saying that the Gemara later on is going to explain to us why these three psulim d'Rabbanan apply to get did not apply to Kiddush. Well, if he says Zeu, the Gerushin lav dafka. Oh, wait a minute. There are two Zeus in our Mishnah. Let's check that out. Mishnah here. Zorat la Kiddushin, Zeu Safek Kiddushin. Now he's got Safek Gerushin. You see the word zeu again? The Mishnah on Daf Lamed Amud Beis uses the word zeu twice. But according to Rava, we're going to have to say that the second zeu, who is lav dafka, because we're applying the principle of Yagid of Reo with regard to get. Meaning that get is the Rea of Kiddushin, and it sheds a light on Kiddushin. If that be the case, my friends, then the word zeu in the Sefer of the Mishnah should not be taken literally. Oh, so why does it say zeu? Just to deliberately confuse me? Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Ela mishum de tanu zeu b'kedushin, tanu zeu b'gerushin. So now we employ another literary rule of Mishnayos, and that's called symmetry. But zeu the kiddushin lemute mai. Oh, so it means that in Gerushin we had three cases, and now the Gemara is going to go, I guess, one by one and down the line and investigate why it would or would not apply to kiddushin. So let's go through it one by one. Lemute mai, lemute zman, the leka b'kiddushin. And I have a feeling that this has to do with Shemi Yechapa. Let's see if I'm right. Kavonat Satano l'mayit mashekosav b'seifel gabei sofi gerushin shemnosan li'erve get shemo zman sheposu m'rabbanu choletzis meini b'siyah bemes the leka b'kiddushin shekozeh shtar kiddushin she'en kosav bo zman kosher af midrabban. Okay then? And therefore she would, just 1 second, she would be a Sarah's error, right? That Leah, I'm sorry, what do we call her? Sarah would not require chalitza. Let's see if he explains it why it's so. L'chein b'ofen kazeh, b'kiddushin, shekidesh asar erev b'shtar kiddushin kos b'zman, ein she'atin ha'mishal letzon tzad, b'torasa muteres l'shuk af below chalitza. Okay then? Oh, now why? Writes, mitakonas chachamim lichov zman b'get, echleku Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish, b'tama takona, l'das Rabbi Yochanan, tiknu kain kadesh lo yechapal bas hachosa. Okay, I'm not going to read that through. L'das Reish Lakish, tiknu kain kadesh lo yafsich peros l'sei molug, shal abal mishas ksiva sagir. Oh, so the Gemara asks the question head on. So both sides, this is what he meant in the footnote, to be patient. as the Israelis say, sablanut. Right? Every language has its. How do you say it in Spanish? ומפני מה לא תקנו זמן בקידושין? הניחא. Oh, so the Gemara says the exact opposite of what we said. Oh, שאם תזנה אשתו אחר קידוש לא יוכל לחפש ללא מה שזינסה קודם שנזכר. What does it mean? He's anticipating that she might have znus. This is very strange. I don't know the psychology here. It bothers me. Do you hear what he's saying? He's saying that since he married her with a kedushin, with a shtar kedushin that has no zman, so he could always be machaper that if she has znus, he'll pull out the kedushin and he'll say, no, she had znus before we got married. And we won't be able to disprove it. Therefore, the Rabbanah required his man so that we'll be able to prove that his wife had this adulterous relation. Because I was asking you, what happened when he gave the shtar kedushin? He anticipated that he wants to be machapel, and she didn't even have the znus yet, so he's not married to her.
Well, either he anticipated, or it so happened,
correct,
that they left the date out.
Exactly.
When it happened,
then we have no proof.
And then she says she has barada or whatever.
Right, exactly. She begs him on all fours, save my life. Right.
We can juggle it.
Oh, so but if we go like Rabbi Yochanan, like Rish Lakish, let's see. Well, that's not an option because that's going to get possible, right? Omar Mishum Peri, which I believe is Rish Lakish. Let's just get the. I'm just curious about the names here. Yeah, this has got to be Rish Lakish. So that doesn't apply to Kiddushin. Because Arusa Leslie Perry. Very cool. Wow. I get special pleasure when I understand anything. This is very cool. So what's Reish Lakish worried about? Why does Reish Lakish require Zman in again? The man continues to enjoy the benefits of his wife's field, as he's been doing for the last X number of years during their marriage. Now he gave her get. He has no rights to the Paris of her field, and he continues eating from the Paris, this fat love, who is an absolute thief. Bad enough that he divorced his wife. Right, I'm defending the wife here. I don't know why he divorced his wife, but anyway. So, and on top of that, he continues to steal from her field. I mean, as long as they were married, it was his right. Now she comes to say, well, the man is a thief. He's a bum. This was not an amicable divorce, right? And she says, I'll prove it. Well, how are you going to prove it? With a get. What do you mean again? The get was given to you yesterday, today. I've been eating the Paris for the last month. No. The get was given to me a month ago, but there's no Zman in the get. So it's in his best interest to leave out the Zman in the get so he can embezzle the Paris. Oh, but in Kiddushin, it doesn't work. Why? Because our Kiddushin only effectuates Erison, and it has no bearing on the monetary financial rights of a husband to his wife's property. So no matter what the Zman on the Kiddushin is, his rights to eat her Paris has not yet emerged. And that's only going to emerge with the Suin. Now I'm just curious to know in the Suin, how does he prove? So he gives her a Ksuba. I don't understand. She has the Ksuba in her possession. How does he prove? If this comes to a court case, how does he prove? What do you say?
He's going to need his agent.
The aiding the suin. I see that. So I don't even know if the suin needs aiding. I don't know. You can prove it the ksuba, but she's holding on to the ksuba. She'll lock up the ksuba in a safe, and then she's going to claim we never had the suin, and he has no rights to the parents. And it's probably more complicated than that. Let's just
The
think.
basin would be able to demand that she produce.
Well,
She
again,
lies, there is no.
Again, the burden of proof is on him. I don't know if Bestin, in order to protect his interests, is going to say to her, let's see the ksuba. I don't know. I don't think so. and especially she's going to tell the Bestin that there is no ksuba. There never was a ksuba. And he never had rights to eat my parents. So I don't know what leg he has to stand on to prove that Achem, there was the suin. So maybe Steve is right. You have aiding the suin. I don't know that you need aiding the suin. Let me just think for a second. You need aiding the suin. Our minhag is to require aiding the suin, but I think that's just a minhag. Let's see, according to the Torah law. Right, in the case of Kedushin, you must have aiding. That's a Dorosh Be'erev. No, does the suin have the status of a Dorosh Be'erev? It's really monetary. That's not true. It's much more than monetary. He has to bury her if she dies. He can be made for 100 dorim, even without the father. So there are, what else? Yerusha, Maisiyah there. Right, Maisiyah there might be Darabanan. Let's see. Yerusha, what else? Kvura. What am I missing? I'm sure I'm missing something. There's a whole bunch of Darabanans, but on a Doraisa level, whether she can light Hanukkah candles on his behalf, but that's also Darabanan. That's called Ishtok Gufo or something like that. So that's only after the Suin, but that's not a Doraisa. We had enough community about, do you remember, Steve, about Zeke? But let's just think. After the Suin, if he dies, no, that was also about the Suin. That was also about Suin and inheritance laws, right? Well, let's just go over that. You don't mind, Jeff. This is a chazor for the next year. If he, let's say like Ruvain married Leah, and they were after the Suin, Ruvain dies without children, and Leah falls to Shimon, right? So now, since there was Nisuin, then Shimon now becomes the husband of the Yevamot. Or what do we call her? Sarah Leah, whatever. So if she dies, he inherits her. And again, the Gemara has Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, and the Gemara goes back and forth on this. But that's only after the Suin. But that L'chora, wait a second. The Gemara is wondering about that Ish. Now, we didn't even touch on this question, whether that Ishus is a Doraisa Allah. Right. The final maskara seems to be that even after the Suin, once we go down one generation, we're going from the original marriage to the brother who's the Yavam. At that point, the Suin becomes, so to speak, the Sal. The Ishus is no longer the same Ishus. Okay, that's a whole different story. Oh, so the Gemara now has a problem here. According to Rabbi Yochanan, that Zman was a Takana Shemi Yechape, it should apply to Kedushin as well. So what's the Zeu? Mishum the Ika the Makadish for Kaspa, the Ika the Makadish for Shtar. Lo tokun rabbanon zman. This is really interesting. The mechanics of this sugya is interesting. He's saying that you could all, here's the way it works. The takon of zman in Rabbi Yochanan's frame of reference of Shem Yechape is only instituted by the Rabbanan if it will achieve its goal. If it won't achieve its goal, the Rabbanan are not going to disqualify the Kedushin, they'll leave it on the Doraisa. And in the case of Kedushin, you cannot achieve your goal and block Shem Yechape. Because all he has to do is give a Kedushay Kesef. You know, it's interesting. It sounds like the Gemara is assuming that from the get-go, when a man marries a woman, he's already has in his mindset this whole scenario. I don't know. Because the Gemara is saying that you really can't block him from a Shevi Yechape, from a Chipur, because he always has the option of Kiddushin, of Kiddushay Kesef. Let's see it inside. The Ika de Makadish Bekaspa, the Ika de Makadish B'Shtora. Right? He has two options. We can't force him one way or the other. It's therefore Lo Token Rabbanan Zman. He says, Hamakadish Bekesef, Yochel Lechapis Al Basachos. You see, if Balabatish, I would have disagreed with the Gemara. I would have just said, look, let's make the takana wherever we can. And even if it's only a partial solution to the problem, but better than nothing. In event that he's Makadish B'Shtar, let's avoid the possibility of Shevi Yechape by requiring that the Shtar has his man. But the Gemara doesn't go with it. It's like an all or nothing situation. Either you can block Shem Yechape with your takana, or you can't. If you can't, then just don't bother with it. Don't try to achieve half an egg.
So Kesef obviously is fake, but nowadays you get a receipt for the receipt of the Kesef, which would be dated. But that wasn't.
No, in fact, I'll say this. If she's very, what's the word I want to use? Nostalgic? No, not nostalgic. What's the word I want to use? People who like to hold on to souvenirs and stuff like that. What's the word for that thing? Anyway, whatever the word is, you got my point. If she's that type, like I don't know if you've ever been at a, like not the Badekin, the Tanoim, and they break a plate and they pick up the pieces for the plate and they remake it. So if she's that type of emotional, nostalgic person, she'll take that money, that coin, and she'll frame it and put it on the wall.
Well, that's what people do when they open up the first business. The dollar they get, they frame it and they put it up.
It's funny you say that. Today's the Lubavitcher Rebbe's birthday. Oh, but it's not this Rebbe's birthday. So I don't know if he gave out balance. But in any event, so it comes out like this. She got kesef. Once she gets that kesef, that's it. She throws it in the garbage. Wherever she does with it, she puts it in the bank. So therefore, what's going to happen is, if that she's accused of an adulterous relationship, she's going to say, "What do you mean? I didn't marry her till today. Today we got married." But what about the 80? That's if we say 80. Yeah, why is there a problem with Shem Yechape? Won't the Eidim establish exactly when she got married? Well, we're talking about and we're talking about Kesef. If we're talking about Shtar, so then Eidim Masira Karse might be. I don't know. The Eidim Masira also know. If you're holding Chasima Karse, so Zman, that we'll never actually know when she got married. But it's a Kesef. I guess the Aiden don't remember exactly when it was. They didn't write down in their diary, right? Because there's no requirement to do so. This chipui business is limited because if they've been married for 50 years, he can't say, well, I just married her today. Well, let's say within a certain bounds, like within a month, I don't know what, 2 months, 3 months, he could say, I just married her today. And the Eidim are not available for question. I don't know, or they don't remember. Rav Achav, Rav Yosef, Rav Ashi. For Avda, the Ika, the Kani, the Kasvi, the Kani, the Star, the Takar, Abundance, Man. I'm going to prove to you that even a partial injunction is better than nothing. Why? Because if a man frees his Eved, apparently there are 2 ways of freeing an Eved. I know of shtar, but now the Gemara said there's another option which is called what? Kasp. So who's paying the kesef? To whom? Are you with me, or I was just asking, just to get you involved. I mean, this is a simple question. Who's paying kesef to who? For shikhr or nevid?
Where's the evidence have?
Again, I have a 50% chance to get the right answer. Either the master, is giving money to the Evid, or the Evid is giving money to the master. Who's giving money to who?
I mean, the Evid should be giving money to the master.
Correct.
Where is he having money from?
Where does he have money from? Okay, that's a question. I think if
he is relevant.
I think you're thinking of the principle called Machakona Evid Kodarab. That's only new monies that came into his possession after he was already sold as an Evid. But it doesn't mean that Evid is poverty. He doesn't have a penny to his name. So let's read it inside. Va'avda the Ika de Kani Bekaspa, the Ika de Kani B'Shtara, Token Rabbanan Zman. So what's the Shema Yechapa here? The problem is that during his period of Avdus, he's been hanging around with a Chifra, which is okay. But now, after the Shifra, he's not allowed to have a relationship with a Shifra. Now, if the Shtar has a date on it, then we can tell exactly on what date he achieved his Shikhr. Yeah? You with me on this? And then we know that if he was hanging around with a Shifra after that date, he has violated an Isur Lav Doraisa of flirting with the Shifra, if you know what I mean. Now, in the case of Kaspa, where there's no date, he can always claim that the Shikhr was delayed and his relationship with the Shifra, what did I say? I said Shikhr? I meant to say Shikhr. The Shikhr was delayed to the latest date, and he was flirting with the Shifra before the Shikhr. So that even though there's an option of terminating the Avdus with Kesef, in which case the Shem Yechapa cannot be protected, nevertheless, we will institute the requirement of a date in a shtarship. Right? So half is better than nothing. He says here, he writes, in Kain Af B'Kiddushin, Afal Gav V'yesh B'Kadshim, Each of B'Kesef, Mikamakom Yesh Lanu L'Taken, Sheyichtov Zman B'Shtar Kiddushin, B'Shvil Elu Shemekadshim B'Shtar. More or less our logic. So the Gemara is much more scholarly. The Gemara knows the case of an Evid. I don't have any notes on this. Oh yeah, wait, there is one note here. No. So again, this is the Gemara's kasha on, I think it's Rava. Did I get the name right? Right? We're trying to figure it out. Let's just get, sometimes you lose the forest for the trees. What are we trying to figure out? The Zehu of Kiddushin. Right? Zehu of Kiddushin. Lemute Ma. We're saying that this psul of Ein Bozman should not apply to Kiddushin. So the Gemara says that makes sense according to Reish, because there's no point to introducing or requiring a zman in a shtar erusin, because there's no nafkamina l'gabe peros. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, why shouldn't there be a requirement to zman in Kiddushin? What's the Zehu coming to exclude? And don't give me this this whole song and dance. Well, he can be Makadisha with Kesef if he wants to be Machaper, because we still should try to do damage control and do the best job that we can, even if it's only for the person who's Makadish B'shtar. And that we proved from what? From Shtar Shichur of an Eved, where it says, Hasam Ruba B'Shtara. Hacha Ruba B'Kaspa. So this business of Shemi Yechapa, meaning that the Eved might have had a relationship with the Shivcha, that applies in 99% of the cases, because as a general rule, the method that was used to be Meshacher and Eved was Shtar. So we don't have to worry about the 1 in a million case, the exceptional fluky case where he was Meshacher as an Eved with Kesef, meaning the Eved bought himself out. But in the case of Kiddushin, to make a takana in Shtar, because of the Shema Yechapa situation, that's not justified, because it's very rare that a person would be Kaddish an Isha with a Shtar. I've never seen it. Nowadays, it doesn't exist. One of those halachas that sort of like, what's the word, atrophy? How do you say when it's, like if you don't use a muscle, it just, what?
Right, it withers.
Withers away. I mean, nobody, if somebody would be Makadish today with a shtar, I think they put him into Cherem or something. It's just not acceptable. Yet there's no other option. So this reminds me of the principle. Have you ever heard the principle? Miltzit lo shlicha lo gazu bei Rabbanon. You familiar with that principle? That when the Rabbanon make zeros, they don't do it in a miltzit lo shlicha. They don't bother with a case that's just unusual. Like, for example, today, many of our wines are pasteurized. In the old days, that was unheard of. So if you have pasteurized wine, which is called yain mevushal, there's no iser of maga aku. In other words, let's say you have an open bottle or a cup of wine, there's no iser. Why? But what about the xera of yeno, stam yeno? The answer is milslo shlicha. Again, today is shlicha, but then it wasn't shlicha. That's one example. I mean, there are zillions of examples. Milslo shlicha goes better. So here too, the Rabbanan are not going to bother with instituting a requirement of Zman in the Shtar Kedusha, because who gets married with the Shtar Kedusha? When was the last time you heard or you read in the newspaper that Reuven married Leah with the Shtar Kedusha? It's unheard of. Now the Gemara comes up with an alternative answer to explain why they didn't institute a zman in kedushin according to Rabbi Yochanan who holds Shem Yechaber, mishum de lo efsh. Okay, what's lo efshar? So if I understand correctly, lo efshar means even if we require zman in the shtar kedushin, you still will not block the possibility of Shem Yechaber. Why? Hehi le'evit. So I think what the Gemara is embarking upon a journey here, an investigation. Who is holding on to the shtar kedushin? Let's just think about this. If she's holding on to the shtar kedushin, right? Not going to produce the shtar. There's no way that the Zman is going to establish her znus. Oh, if he's holding on to the shtar, he also is not going to produce the shtar because he wants to do chapal basachos. Oh, let's see if we can tamper with the shtar. Oh, that's a nice possibility. If she's holding on to the shtar, she's going to erase the Zman and claim that the get was given a month ago. The whole patent place.
That's what they said to Nixon about the Watergate. Why didn't you erase them?
Why didn't you erase them?
Yeah, erase them.
Why didn't he actually? Such an honest guy?
No, I mean, I think he thought that he was still going to get away with it, and he wanted.
So he didn't have
all the tapes, the posterity, everything. Even though when you heard some of the conversation he was having with his close advisors, were not very nice conversations about people and groups of people of this sort.
Right. Again, if she's holding on to the shtar kedushin, she's going to erase this man and claim that she just recently got married. Right? Now, let's say he's holding on to the shtar kedushin, and he'll also erase this man. Wait a minute. Let's see. In lichal gabi dida machkol, linche gabi dide. Zimnin de basachos. You machku mechapel. What do you mean mechapel? Mechapel means that he'll erase the zman. No. Yeah, yimchal. Oh, now the Gemara raises a third possibility. Linche gabi eden. That's a brilliant idea. If they remember the date on which the kedushin took place, let him come in and testify without the shtar. If let's say the Edom have long forgotten when the kedushin took place, then we have to afraid for the following scenario. They look at their writings or their signature. The asu mishadid. And now they're going to come to testify, even though they don't really remember it, but they look at the date in the shtar and they'll say, well, this is the date on which they got married. And if she had any hanky-panky afterwards, then she's in trouble. So Gemara says, no, that's not true. Why? That Edom are not allowed to testify based on what they saw, even in their own handwriting. Can you imagine? I both say, listen to the following case. Let's say I keep a diary, which I don't. But let's say I did. Young people sometimes keep diaries. Girls, maybe more than boys. I don't know what the sociology is. So you keep a diary. You have no recollection when something happened, but it's written in your own handwriting. So you're going to come forward and testify in front of a court of law based on what you have in your own signature, but you don't remember. And the Torah says, you can't base your testimony on that which is written. That's not testimony. Now, I would ask the following question. What happens and I think a psychologist would back me up on this, I don't know. If I don't remember, but then I look into my own handwriting and then I remember, I think that would be caution. The Gemara is worried about the scenario in which he doesn't have any recollection. It says Sunday, May 1st, 19, whatever. He doesn't remember when the marriage took place. But he knows, he does remember because he saw it in his own handwriting. The Gemara says that's a psul mipiem v'lo mipi psavam. So the Gemara is now coming with a radical answer to the question as to why, according to Yochanan, they never instituted a requirement of Zman in Kiddushin, because where are you going to leave it? You have three options. If you leave it in her hands, she'll be mochik because she wants to get off the hook. If you leave it in his possession, then if it's his niece, he'll erase the Zman. And the third possibility is the Edom. Oh, that's dangerous. You're dealing with fire, because what's going to happen? You're going to have a capital case because she's now being accused of adultery. They're going to testify that she was married, and they're going to pin it down to a certain date, not based on their own memory, but what they saw in the shtar. That's called mipim v'lo b'sov. Nimtza she'ein shum to'eles b'ksivas hazman b'shtar kiddushin.
Like today,
why don't they leave it in distance?
That's what I would say. We record these things with
exactly. That's what I don't understand. Oh, Harishonim Hikshu. Let's see if this is our question. Adayin yesh makom l'takid lichtos man b'kiddushin lanicho eitzel ha'edim. No, this is not our question. Well, he's asking, maybe the Eidim, after they look at the shtar, they see the date, they'll remind themselves. They go through their records and they say, yeah, that's the Sunday when we went to, I was once with Sarah Kiddushin. I remember it was in Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn, and it was a blizzard. And we barely got a minyan for the wedding. There's no way I would ever forget that day. So sometimes I don't remember exactly the date is, but I look into the shtar and then I remember it.
I think it was in the wedding days one time with a blizzard. It took us days to get out.
And they canceled the wedding, or
no, and the wedding was then, and then it was hard to get out from the wedding.
Oh,
we were staying in Bayswater, and we were still 2 days.
Yeah, that was
unfair.
Yeah. Today it's less likely to happen because the meteorology is I think is a little more sophisticated. You would probably anticipate such a snowstorm. But back in the day,
people didn't come to the wedding, but they weren't going to cancel the wedding.
No, I'm saying, but you said you got stuck.
Yeah, we couldn't get out.
So my question is, didn't you know it was going to snow?
We did know it was going to snow. We didn't know how much.
Oh, I see. Today, I think they actually tell you how many inches. It's unbelievable. Again, I don't know how much is reliable. They'll tell you every hour, by hour. But the Chas and Kala, they always remind us of the Hakaras HaTov that we made that effort to come in a blizzard. Now he says, Madua lo tiknu lahafkid es hashtar v'yad shlish. He doesn't say bezdin, he says a shlish. Ubekach lo shayach hashach she'amra gemara she'miya'idu mitoch hashtar. So he says ayin b'likutei vir. So that's something we could maybe check in the back. Oh wait, did we make it to the Mishnah? What time is it? 36. Okay. Let's say Ihachi begerishin nami nema hachi. Oh, so you are right. Rabbi Yochanan is writing a date in what? In a shtar gerishin, because what? Now we're going to prove that Haznus took place before the Zman. So let's just think, Rabbi Osai, who's holding on to the shtar gerishin? She's holding on to the shtar gerishin. She's going to erase the date. Pasam atzola dida ka'asi. Achalechova dida ka'asi. What in the case of Latzola Dida, he wants to say that the get took place before his nus. Is ein lachsho shema timchokes azman min haget. Kevon shim yavo edim shezinsa v'lo tia biyada raya shizgarsha kodem az nus. Ehargu osa b'bez. I guess the Gemara is anticipating a situation where she had nus after the Gerish. So she doesn't want to erase the Zman because that's our only proof to let her off the hook. So the Zman could work both against her or in favor. Again, I find this very strange that she's already thinking of having some sort of moral relationship after the Gerish. But okay, fine, it's after the Gerish. So she has a cheskes eishes, and she's in deep trouble, deep hot water when the Aiden testified that she had a relationship with another man. So therefore, she desperately needs this man. Aval im lo hayu chachamim v'taknim lichtov zman beget, v'yachol lechapos olev misafek lo mishabels zman shezinsa kfar nisgarsha. But hacha, in the case of a shtar kedushin, lechova dida ka'as. We're coming to testify that she is an Ashes each, that the marriage is valid. Lachein lo yoil, mashin nisaken, lichtov zman b'shtar kedushin. Kevan she'afim zinsa, hatmin et hashtar. She's going to hide the shtar. Below totzienu klal, and hochazaka is a cheskes pnuya. And we cannot assume that she's married until we have proof positive that she's married at the time of the so-called znus, and we have no shtar because she's hiding the shtar. Okay, then, so this is the Mishnah here, towards the bottom of Lamed Aleph on base. We'll make a note of that. This was a lot of fun, barrel of fun. Okay, very good. Have a good Shabbos.